Alright, hello everyone, my name is Disc, and in this video we have a 13 Siege of Boralus, first time for the channel. If you're new to the channel, thank you for tuning in. This is mainly a Mythic Plus channel, although I do think a lot of the tips and tricks we talk about here can apply to other modes of play. The main goal with this channel is to kind of teach how to min-max our spec, our role as a Disc Priest. My philosophy with min-maxing is it's not a broad approach, it's a specific approach. So a lot of what we talk about here are how to min-max each one of our individual spells specifically. But we have had some changes to discipline in the last week, making us the word I will not say. But I do want to flash the talents before we get into this key, and I do want to talk about a couple of things here. But I am going to splash the blue post. This is where we're starting at the beginning of this week. Our flash heal was increased and our radiance was increased. You know who doesn't love just standard number increases? It's pretty nice. But with Radiance, it makes it even more important that we try and maximize this spell. After we cast a Radiance, the goal is really to have all 5 of our team atoned. So there's a couple different ways you can go about it, but it's a short range heal. Atonement's only spread by 30 yards. So oftentimes I'll put myself in the middle of my party cluster and Radiance myself. A lot of times I have to use party nameplates to kind of discern who's most central in the cluster so that my one Radiance atones the whole group. And we really want to give effort to this because otherwise we're going to be wasting globals and we're going to have lower healing. And then just another tip I use for Radiance. A lot of times I'll just cast it on the tank if it looks like everyone's around the tank. Or a lot of times if just one of my party is unatoned, I'll cast the Radiance on them. And then Flash Heal. This is where I wanted to kind of navigate back to our talents and talk about a couple of notes. So being that our Flash Heal is boosted now, its numbers are boosted, this is a choice node that I've changed, I think, a couple months ago at the start of the expansion. And I really like taking from Darkness Comes Light. I believe the recommended one is Protective Light, the 10% damage reduction. But I have all these extra defensive points banked at the bottom of my tree, and I've gotten pretty good at using them. Along with that, I'm pretty good at keeping my dot uptime, using penance to spread my dots. So when I come to this choice node, I look at Protective Light as a personal defense, and From Darkness Comes Light is a group-wide defensive. And since I already have all these other defensive points, since I'm pretty good at using them, and then since I'm also good at my dot uptime, I'm going this route. And now that Flash Heal is buffed even further, this is proving to be a really good spot heal, which is a qualm a lot of people have with Discipline. Is we're excellent when we're proactive, but when we're found, in moments where we have to be reactive, we don't have as much. So Flash Heal is kind of our spot healing. We get instant flash heals from these talents over here. And then now that it's buffed by another 15%, I'm noticing when I get a crit flash heal here, it's actually healing someone for about half their health bar, which is making it really, really good. And then I am getting into 14s now. I might consider going back to damage reduction, but so far in 14s, I'm not dying just to, standard mechanics. And then something else to think about with the flash heal being buffed and taking this talent and flash heal, we have binding heals, and this is not something to be overlooked. Binding heals does apply an atonement on you as well when you flash heal someone else. And then if we have all these other talent points buffing our flash heal, it's always kind of keeping you filled. So in a sense, this is defensive as well. These are both defensive points, but giving it to the group with kind of spot healing, I just think is the route I'm going to go right now. And then just on the subject of spot healing, Guile and Woe is our spot healing. Don't think it's not. It just kind of demands that you have a proactive playstyle. And we cast Penance every, 4 to 5 seconds. There are so many opportunities to use Guile and Woe to give it to a single target shield to mitigate incoming damage. And I use the targeted cast Weakguard to help me kind of manage that. And I do think we see a lot of examples in this key using the targeted cast Weakguard and Guile and Woe. And then the rest of this is pretty standard. I don't want to dwell too much here. If you have questions about any of it, please ask. And then for this key, I do want to splash the damage I didn't in my last video because I was kind of in a hurry, but I do want to splash the damage here. This is quite telling when it comes to our healing. So we really want to aim for high DPS and find kind of like an aggressive stance. But in this key, I was at 385,000 per second, which is a pretty good benchmark. I'd like to hit over 4,000 if I can, but not every dungeon allows it. But over 400,000, I mean, is very doable with an AUG, but approaching 400 is kind of a really good benchmark I aim for. But then looking at the damage spread, Rift and Void Wraith are on the top. This is kind of exactly what we want to see with the rest of the spells trailing behind. And one thing I'm noticing getting into higher keys, a lot of times I'm having to sacrifice this 6th Torment I talked about and just settle for 5 in order to keep people alive. The damage is very important, but a lot of times in these higher keys especially, the situation just calls for something else and I'm kind of losing torments. So I think that's why the Void Wraith is on 2nd in this dungeon, but who's to say? And last before we start the key, remember I'm on Metafy if you're interested in a private lesson. I do believe a one-on-one environment is a lot better for learning. When I can talk specifically about what I'm seeing in your play, we can just get a lot more done, and I've been having a lot of really good success over there. So please go check me out. I also offer dungeon reviews, which I think is a really good tool if you're trying to learn discipline. Also, if you're interested in any of my UI elements, I have those open to all of my students through Metafy, or if you just join the channel as a member, they're open to all of you as well. And then as we go through this video, again, remember, if we're really trying to get the most out of our spec and really have a lot of fun doing it, we have to constantly think about these individual mini games within our spec. So it revolves heavily around timing our spells. We want to have a rift out before damage. We want to have a radiance out during the rift. We have to constantly be switching our targets to find dots in order to penance, switching our targets to find executes for our torments, and then also having a focus macro to fall back to our schism to not lose that value there since we are taking 1 point into extended schism. And then making sure we're getting our torments. We're aiming for 8. 6 is always doable. 5 is proving to be quite common. 7 is still pretty accessible as well, but making sure we're getting our torments, making sure they're timed well, making sure we're casting radiance on the best person. And the biggest mini game getting into higher keys is the play of our defensives. So watch out for that. We really want to play a defensive anytime there's an attack. And with Fade being such a relatively short cooldown, it is off the global as well. We really want to get in good habit of practicing our defensives. Even if you're in lower keys, the intention is to practice how you want to perform in higher keys. And food for thought, I have Desperate Prayer and Fade on a macro for 1 button, so I can pretty easily cycle between them just with 1 keybind. I do have a separate keybind for Fade on its own because it has different types of utility as well. But if you're starting out and not getting good play of defensives, just go ahead and put them on 1 keybind. And then also just talking about getting the most out of our spec and macros and keybinds. If you're not using Tempered Potion, go ahead and put that as a macro with PI. That is a really good way to start getting your potions going. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and clip over to the key. And quickly here, I'm noticing I did not have Mass Dispel in my talent walkthrough. This is definitely a Mass Dispel dungeon. I just did not want to re-record that section. But the name of the game with this dungeon is all about the timing of our spells. We really ideally want the Pet and Rift out plus the Radiance out before these group-wide hits. And we have it from Trash, we have it from bosses. So it's a really good time to practice the timing of our spells, remembering the Rift is about 11 seconds. So here on this first pull, I slightly delay so that it overlaps. Yikes, almost got myself in trouble, sorry tank. Holy shit, paints up. And so noticing on nameplates, I'm only tracking 1 attack. This is the Bellows. It is something that can interrupt us. And I cast my Pet and Rift delayed. There's my Radiance during the Rift. Desperate Prayer, our shield wall. Looks like I dropped my dots. I got 5 torments, but that's pretty good. And yeah, let me know what you think of my new cast bar. That glow indicates that I have a combat potion rolling, but it's a native cast bar that also shows globals. So a critique I had from many of my viewers is it's hard to follow along, and they wanted a global tracker. So I think that's a fairly good compromise. But coming up to this next pole is pretty threatening. We can LOS, the hook attack, but the way this pole chains, they're about to overlap. So we see two attacks. The bellows can interrupt us. And yeah, since the bellows can interrupt us, if you see that red, white, and black bar there above my spells, I like pulling important spells like that up in a fixed location so my eyes can get used to where I'm looking, rather than nameplates which are moving. Okay, I had Rift. I delayed it so it would overlap with these attacks. And right here, since my healing window is expiring, I believe I'm about to go into a Rapture just to cover. And this is where I would say his pulls are a little off standard, but we actually get through it. So here goes a full pet window. Let's see how many torments I get. Pet is out, Rift is out, Radiance during the Rift. And 6 torments, that's what we want. And one thing to note with these pulls, there's a lot of guys that do it depending on how your tank pulls, but we have to stack in melee. If you are in ranged, that's the only time they're going to jump and whack you in the back. So pay attention here. Tank down. There's no aggro out. Atonements were in party, thankfully. Desperate Prayer was used just to make sure. And the play there was get our pet out ASAP. And 7 torments for the win. And so a lot of cases, this pull has a lot of health left. I don't have my pet, and I really want it to have a chance to reset, but we can send a half rotation. So here goes just the Rift. And I think the problem the Mage was having there, I'd have to watch it back, but he has the problem in the next 2 pulls, which I'll highlight. I think he's standing at ranged. He's getting whacked and died. Here goes another half rotation. The most important thing while your Rift is out on a half rotation is just make sure you get 2 penance cast. CDR is really important in that window. And then I actually really like this tank. That was giving me false impressions, but I think he handles it pretty well. So ideally, I would have my pet Rift and Radiance out before the grip in, but I didn't, so we're just casting it as soon as we can. But the idea here is it kind of mimics the boss. We have these group-wide hits where we get pulled in. We just want to make sure we time our Rift, maybe pet and Rift appropriately. There, you're there for the win. But we want the Rift out, plus our first penance, plus a Radiance before the grip. And that applies to the trash mobs, and that applies to the boss. I think we have really good examples of that. But let's see if I get... we don't really have much time at the start of these pulls. The first grip is just so quick. But you can get all of that done before the first grip if you're quick enough. So let's see how I do here. So I want the pet out, the Rift out, Radiance out, all before the grip. So I did not get the Radiance out in time. But you can Radiance on that pull in if you're quick about it. And then also it's a really niche spell. Yeah, grip the Mage in there. It's a really niche spell, and I think this is the only time I can see myself using it. But on these grip ends, as we're moving away, if everyone is atoned, I'll cast a Holy Nova. And the idea there is Holy Nova itself heals, and it also is an atonement heal. So while we're all stacked, it's getting its most value. So if everyone's atoned, I'll cast the Nova on my walkout, just to have something happening versus nothing. Nova. So let's see how this boss goes. It was pretty clean. And when it comes to... Yep, we see the fixated Viq'Goth making a noise and dotting his unit frame when I'm selected. On open, if I'm selected first, I'll always cast a Rift. But when it comes to timing our spells... I didn't know he would follow me like that. We really want to play our pet after the bomb. So right here. So here's the idea. We have a grip incoming is all I'm thinking about. So I want my first round of torments over with, pet out, rift out, plus my radiance, all before the grip. Holy Nova on the run out, and I had Fade rolling as my defensive. And when it comes to this bomb mechanic, it's one of the few dungeons where I think there is total RNG to this fight. But you always want to plan your next move. See where your bombs are. And yep, on this grip in, I had my Rift out and my Radiance out all before the grip in. And the idea with timing it that way is while you're running, you don't have much to give. And you want the collapse to kind of be the heal that recovers from that group-wide hit. I'm not sure what happened there. I watched this back a couple times, but what knocked him back, I'm not sure. Okay, so let's see. Pet's out, Rift out, Radiance is out, and watch how the collapse recovers his health. Actually, that one was a miss. But watch all the other ones if you want better examples. And I was planning my next move. I was already in position. Rift is out. Grip is incoming. Rift is out. Radiance is out. And that one was a lot better. So I think the one prior was slightly early. It's hard to do. But when it comes to the Rift, it's about 11-second cooldown. So you have to kind of consider that when you're playing it. But I think all but one were good examples where the collapse happens after the grip in. And that is our best tool for recovering that group-wide health. And this pull's a little crazy. So this is where we start to see the targeted cast Viq'Goth come into play. So one person in the group is going to take a big hit from this horse. If we can shield them before it hits, kind of the idea. So I have PI to give. The pull, there goes PI. The pull's not too hard, but of course I forgot he changed it. The pull's not too hard, but the horse does have a lot of health, so we want to get PI rolling. So I shielded that guy before the horse hit him. Cast a barrier just to kind of soften that grip in. Being that I wasn't fully anticipating that chain, I didn't have the healing output that I wanted. So the next best thing you can do is mitigate it with a barrier. Okay, I have Pet and I have Rift. Always a good practice in between pulls to kind of scan what you have available. That way you're not reaching for a spell that's not there and wasting time. Rift is out, Pet's out. My Radiance wanted the melee just to make sure the tank is hit. And since I killed that guy with Execute, it did not reset and I only got 5. So rip. Yeah, again, 5 is proving to be fairly common in these higher keys. We want to aim for 6 always. 7 and 8 is bonus territory. Let's see. I didn't know he was coming over here either. So I dot the Darkest Red Mob. That is the one with the most health. Waiting for my Rift to come back 3 seconds away. Going for a full rotation here. So let's see how many torments I get. This is not that big of a pull, so I should be able to kind of greed my torments. Master Radiance for the procs. Seven. So I think that was my first 7 torment window. I'm not sure if I get any 8s in here, but we'll see. And here I send a Rift. It's a pretty free spell to cast. And collapsed it early for the win. Cancel Aura / cancel Aura Entropic Rift to cancel it. You never want your Rift collapsing after a pull dies. Yeah, you can pretty freely send it. Uh-oh, he boinked the mage. You can pretty freely send it. Oh my gosh, and I put my schism on the wrong person. So, I'll try and get back to that thought, but you really want to put your schism on the horse here. That's why it's a dark red. Shadow meld that one away, because that schism I just cast went on a lesser mob, I would call them, and I lost, I think, more than half the value. But Rift, back to that thought, is a fairly free cooldown to play. Its cooldown is affected by haste, so every time I'm casting shield and getting the borrowed time, it's helping its cooldown. But there was a little bit of time in between one pull to the next, so I went ahead and sent the Rift out, canceled it back there, and had it back in plenty of time for this pull. Yeah, the more Rift, the better. And that's crazy that the horse went all the way back there. But we have a big pull coming up. I have my focus target set early, and I really want to lead with a healthy amount of dots. I do not have Shadow Meld, so I preemptively cast a Rapture on myself. And noticing that I had Sack, I did not pop my defensives yet either. Really just wanting to get my pet and Rift out. So here it is, I'm at 3 Torments. Give myself another Rapture. Switch targets to spread my dots. And a couple of Executes for 6 Torments. I have 1 Rapture Shield left. And I keep getting selected with this, so there was my defensive combo, Desperate Prayer and Fade, which I'm already thinking what that means is on boss with the Ricochet. I'm not going to have any personals to give, so let's see how I play it. I believe a first really good combo of spells is the pet with Vampiric Embrace. I think that's what I do on the first one here, so let's see. Yeah, on a pull like this, most trash pulls in general, we get 1 pet, but we can get 2 Rifts. I think that's what I did here. And that's kind of a pretty standard split throughout dungeons, is twice as many Rifts as Void Wraith. So the only bar timer I'm tracking here is the Ricochet. Full party of Atonements, Void Wraith with Vampiric Embrace. Six Torments. So here comes our half rotation. In these phases, I want to dot 1, let my pennant spread the other 2, and we want to send a Rift, and that's it. So we Rift and Void Blast. Speed boosts are great defensive spells. And on land, on the first Ricochet is one where we don't have to dance. It is the better opportunity for something like Barrier, and I think that's what I do here. So in between her phases, I'm always kind of scanning what's available in my book. Okay, so I did not Barrier, but this time what I did is I queued my personal defensives as my combo with the pet Rift window. And 6 Torments. Okay, so for this, I like to get a Radiance leading into a Rapture. It was a little dicey there, but I Radiance into the Rapture to go ahead and buy a proc. The Atonements will make the Rapture hit harder due to our Mastery. And right there, I sent my Rift, I forfeited it on this intermission phase, because we really just could not afford the boss to do 1 more Ricochet. It's a timed mechanic. And we can see that timer on her nameplate. Really nice weak aura. I worked with the author of it. Oh, my collapse missed there. But we have these tick marks on her nameplate that kind of indicate the phase. We have so many... Here goes the barrier. So many bosses and mechanics this season that operate on thresholds. So kind of seeing that on your nameplate is going to be the best way to manage those attacks. Seven Torments. And a very fair play at this point of the fight is a personal Pain Sup plus a Rift. planning a forced collapse. I'm kind of not wanting to play my pet at the end of the boss here, so I sent a Rift, personal paints up. Yeah, so really that's all about tracking the one ricochet and then comboing spells. So either pet with barrier, pet with personals, pet with vampiric embrace. You can paint up yourself with raptures. A lot of different ways you can combo your spells, but especially getting into higher level keys, it's all about a combo. Just the pet and rift is not usually enough. Alright, and on that first slam, I went into a rapture. Similar to the rest of this dungeon, we have one attack timer on nameplates here. That is the group-wide hit. I did not have barrier, but I had rapture. Pain Seps were down. A perfect time for a rapture. Helps with the CDR. That one I mixed in Fade. I got 6 Torments. Let's see, I might go for a half rotation here. I think I'm holding. And Star though. Executes, keeping my dots active with Penance. Okay, and it looks like I have Vampiric Embrace. That's about it. Let's see how I do this next one. So it's all about timing. All about timing our collapse after the group-wide hit. And they happen pretty quickly too. Soothe those guys for comfort. I do have personals though, so let's see if I queue them. Okay, defensives are played, and yes, Vampiric Embrace was comboed. So Pet Rift with VE. Worked in my Radiance during my Rift. And missed executes. So that was only a 4 torment window. And never count out your shield as a defensive. A lot of time that is all you need. And on that one, we were all full health. And I just gave myself a shield before the group-wide attack. And it was like half my health bar, so. Okay, back to Rapture for this hit. Queued in Fade with it. And this is a pretty big pull, so I want to get my health up a little bit here. I'm considering this my ramp. Okay, I used a health potion. And I really just want to get a damage grab. So I have Atonements out. Here goes the Pet and Rift. Here goes PI. Divine Star while they're all stacked. Six Torments. Gotta move on. I believe this was a skip. In all honesty, I did this key 10 times trying to get one that was timed well. That was a pull. So there's a lot of spike damage here. And praise Jesus, I pressed my shield wall and Fade, just anticipating something. And I was the first picked. And I lived. So barrier. Really all I'm thinking is with that barrier, I don't have any atonements in group. I'm nowhere ready to getting my pet and rift out. So the atonement was just to kind of buy me a little time. So pet and rift are out. Radiance mid-window. Switch my target to preserve my dots. Excuse me. And 6 torments. So that ramp, if you will, took a little bit longer, but since we only get 1 pet per trash pull anyway, it is worth your while to make sure you have a strong dot and atonement ramp before you go into your pet window. Okay, we have more grippy whippies on this one. So my pet is almost here. I'm buying just a little bit of time until he's ready. I pressed Shadow Metal, did not have it. Thankfully, a quick as life paints up and sack. I was able to cover myself before the hit. And here's our pet window. 6 torments. 7 torments. Okay, PI's up, and I think if I remember right, he does this next area a little crazy, which I actually like as long as the group can handle it. Holy Nova. Then we have PI. I'm giving it to Nasmus, I believe. And I changed my nameplate colors here. They were too similar. It looks like two have the same health here, the dark reds, but actually the horse is a far standout. So I separated those a little bit more. New codes coming soon, by the way. My goal is to put new codes out every first of the month. So this will be my first full month of having memberships on my channel. Thank you for all those who support. So love renews, especially if you have the time. Want a dot 2. Shielded that guy before the hit. Here goes the pet. So scanning my spells from third party, I have Rapture and Shield Wall. Okay, amazing. That was a Shadow Meld. Good thing I Shadow Melded one of them because it looks like I got both. Is that what just happened? There's PI. Maybe a little bit late, but better late than never. Going into Rapture to cover the tank. And these upfront hits. And right here I sent a half rift. I fully have a little bit of loss here. I should have sent the pet with the rift. There's my last pain sup, but we just gotta have it. Looking at the poisons on him, I think he might have been a little lax on his poison dispel. It's hard to say. Okay, so here goes my full pet window. So to kind of drive my point home, my pet was ready a minute ago, and I went for a half window, having a lot of loss. So I had a 5 torment window there, and now my pet is 30 seconds away, which kind of sets my cadence here off. So we get a lot of back and forth rotations. Ideally, I'd open with a full rotation and go to a half. I don't have my pet, so barrier. Barrier plus fade. A precast of Radiance. And I'm just spamming Smite here to get my pet back. And I think I do get back on sync, but let's see how long it takes. Here goes my Rift. My Radiance early just for the coverage. And these phases, although dodging is very important, the number one thing I'm thinking about is Smite. I need to get my pet back. And that's even if I didn't mess up my rotation. So that is a personal shield plus both defensives, Desperate Prayer and Fade. And again, never count out a personal shield. It's a 6-second cooldown. You can always give it to someone. Give it to yourself. Okay, pet is out, Rift is out. Personal shield. I believe that was a personal wheel and woe shield. A 5 torment window. So I think it's it might be becoming obvious, more obvious from a viewer standpoint. A lot of times to live, we have to prioritize our globals differently and forfeit torments. So getting a 5 torment window, pretty okay. And right here is a Radiance into Rapture. Our shields will hit harder with atonements due to mastery. And what I like doing there is I cast 4 of the 6 and I bank the other 2. And I really just want to hold on to them because a shield is a 15-second buff. I want to hold on to them and cast them late to cover the next attack. Okay, so 6 torments, Wheel and Woe Rapture on myself, gave the second shield to the Mage, and then now I think we're back on sync. This is just a half rotation. We're about to dance. So this is a great time to just farm CDR. It's a great time just to roll your Rift. And then here we are. After the dance phase, we really always want a full rotation. Let me get Atonements and Party. Personal shield plus both defensives, and my health didn't even move. It's kind of what you want. So arguably here in hindsight, and I wish I did it a little differently, I sent my pet when the boss was at 22% health. Basically what I did is forfeit the opportunity for an 8 torment window. So bosses are a great chance, a great time to shoot for 8 torments because we get reliable executes. So in a case like that, and that was just a bad play for me. If the boss is at 21, 22%, you're better off waiting a second to cast your pet. So I cast him anyway. Let's see if I get 8 here. Also, as the boss is dying, I might not be eager to cast pet. Okay, an early collapse, 4 torments. But I think what I did there, I did cast my pet even though he was dying, because I know that there's FAP here incoming. So even though my pet is 30 seconds away, it'll be back by the time we get down there. And really, this is a Hail Mary on the start. I think the first round of attacks is the hardest to get through, so we want to use our Mass Dispel early, Rapture early, lead into the Rapture with a Radiance, and we don't really want to give Raptures to tanks. Okay. Rapture's out, 2 dots out, Mass Dispel, Rapture to fill back in. We're covered. And the name of the game here is Quick Dispels. If it lands on the tank, it's kind of a grace period. The tank doesn't necessarily need a Dispel. And you also have to think about who is more squishy. So in a case like that, I dispelled the Mage. Also, as we're getting into higher keys, not a bad idea to practice this in lower keys. Defensive penance are very important. And with Bigwigs here, I'm really just tracking these 2 attacks. The Slam, which comes and goes, and the Putrid Waters, which is consistent. If you can, I'm always running a Fade before the Waters, just kind of guessing. But it's a pretty liberal spell to play, and the Waters can kill you. Yep, so I dispel the Mage, leaving it to rest on the tank, which is fine. And I believe I go defense here, just to help the transition. I go Barrier? Yep. Barrier with Fade. Radiance for the proc. And I think the Barrier covered me getting hit with that dot too, followed by a Quick Dispel. And if you're wondering, the name of the game with Dispels, you don't want them to tick. And I see that a lot when I'm getting into other keys where I'm having to rely on the team to Dispel. Asking a Shaman or a Mage or a Druid to Dispel is something... is something they just don't get. I think they look at it as defensive penance plus a Wheel and Woe Rapture. I think a lot of people look at dispelling as optional, or at least they don't understand how important they are. It's a total miss in their understanding of the game mechanics, and they'll let dots tick for 3 or 4 times. That's not the play. So I had 1 Rapture to give left. I gave it to the person with the dot. So when it comes to that second dot, the first person is pretty comfortable as long as they are topped. So I'm kind of just watching these meters and making sure no one is low before the waters come out. And this person who holds the dot, you have to give them everything. So it's either a defensive penance, it could be a pain sup, it could be raptures, Wheel and Woe shields, a defensive penance followed by a Wheel and Woe shield, things like that. Grip the Death Knight over for help. And we have 2 defensives here. We've not needed them yet, but I gave myself 1 there. So it kind of looks like the paint up on myself went totally to waste, but I think I gave it to myself just in case I was picked with the waters, because while this tentacle is up, the demolishing tentacle, everyone is in danger because we have double mechanics. Yeah, so it's better to be safe than sorry. Yeah, I have a couple shields left to give. And here I'm coding the group, just anticipating the waters, just hoping one of these 3 people is picked. I also have my Mass Dispel back. see if I get a half rotation here. Okay, good. Only one went out. And even though the fight is over now, we're going to get a couple more dots. You don't really want to run away too soon, because you might find deaths if you abandon your party. But, boom. So I had to try this key, honestly, 10 times in a row to get a good recording. And this was the first one, so I think it's quite a sensitive key, but to get through it without any deaths, pretty happy with this one and happy to add it to my channel. But with that final boss, it's quite chaotic. It's really all about just doing your best to keep people topped. We have to play our pet and rift constantly. So, you know, if we have the tentacle up still, it's high time for group defense, things like barrier, rapture, and these are things you need to do ahead of the damage. You can't wait for it to go out. You really have to use your kit to the fullest here to get through. Mass Dispel for the win, totally, and using things like rapture, anticipating the waters going out. The upfront damage of the water is actually quite a bit more threatening than its tick damage. So just making sure that no one dies from the water applying is kind of the name of the game. So keeping people topped, using barrier for overlapping mechanics with the tentacle, using paint ups on yourself, making sure you're rolling defensives. But yeah, that was a pretty good key. Happy to have done it. Even though this tank was stressing me out in the beginning, I think he did pretty well in the end. And hopefully we can play more together in the future. But yeah, all these mini games for the win, constantly thinking about switching our targets to min-max our spells, making sure we're timing our spells, making sure we're playing our defensives, and that is really what WoW is all about. Yeah, with all that being said, thanks again for tuning in. Please check out my Metafy. Please join the channel as a member if you want some of my UI codes. But until next time, Disc out.